Hi there, I have Danica with me, and we're in my home doing the reading from The Golden Present, the daily inspirational readings by Swami Satchidananda. And this is for February 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Danica's just back from being down in Venice Beach. I didn't get to go this time.
Sadly.
But
I ate enough for both of us, though.
Sad. You did? No, you did.
Beautiful vegan food.
Awesome. So the heading for today, and also this is in a question and answer format, so we'll read it that way. There is a natural gravitation. Starts off with this question. Why is it so difficult to be disciplined?
Sri Gurudev says, that is part of nature. There is a natural gravitation that makes it easy to push things down and hard to lift them up. That pull is there, but we have been given the capacity to face it and rise above it. That is discipline.
Short. That's it. You know what's funny is I was just thinking about the previous ones about discipline, and I was thinking to myself, because we're not reading these ahead of time, but I was like, I want to read another one about discipline, because that to me is such a powerful part of what practice is about, and the reason for, I think, why many of us were drawn to a practice is recognizing that we had our habit way of doing things, but that there was this interest in trying to shift. And the only way to really do that, and what the Yoga Sutras talk about, is through discipline, through practice and non-attachment. And I like this whole idea about, again, relating nature with discipline. Like the gravity pull it's naturally pulling downwards, so that takes that effort to lift them up.
Yeah, it reminds me of the discipline it takes to do the asana. You know, you have this body and it weighs something. You know, the poses, and you have this body and it could be tired, it could be hungry, it could be any of those things. You know, that bring you down.
Yeah, emotionally down.
Emotionally, you could have had something difficult. So, you know, you go into yoga and you just keep serving the practice, and you know, the more disciplined you become, the easier it is, even on your hardest days, you know, because it's just part of the discipline of nurturing and nourishing that part of your practice.
Well, I think that is the key, is that the more you do it on a regular basis, of course, we're all going to come across days where we're feeling really good, we're feeling upbeat and happy, and then there's days when you're feeling down, and you don't even maybe know why, or there's days you're sad and you do know why, or you're angry or frustrated or feeling helpless, and though you just keep showing up because you've built in this discipline, and you know that every time you practice there's usually some kind of resolve, there's some kind of connection with that peace that is available when you connect body and mind and spirit and breath. You know, something shifts.
And even to take it further, so, you know, all of those things you said about, you know, it could be a sad day for whatever reason. Instead of turning to something habitual, something that, you know, could make it feel better in the moment, you go towards the discipline, and those things become less and less difficult over time. But if you just keep turning towards this thing that's band-aiding it, essentially, then you're never really moving through it. So as it keeps happening, and actually, if you never really, you know, moving through it, then it never really fully heals to a different place. You know? Whereas if you have a discipline, at some point, something could have, like, say somebody's walking on the street, and they're like, "Hey, you're a jerk," you know, and you're really affected by it, you know. Or next day you're walking down the street and you bump into somebody. Even walking on the street it's an irritant if you're in a busy place.
Right.
You know, but the more you discipline, it's like, every time I bump into somebody, I'm going to love them. Or every time I, you know, hear somebody say something mean to me or somebody else, I'm going to just breathe in and breathe out. You know, it's just that practice, you know, replacing it with something healthy. Then eventually you'll be walking down the street and you'll be like glowing, you know, and somebody will bump into you and you'll be like, "Oh, excuse me, sir."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because you've instilled within yourself this different way of relating, but there's the only way to get there is through that discipline, through that practice. And you know, the the practice of yoga also talks about, lead us from the unreal to real.
Mm-hmm.
Lead us from the darkness into the light,
Mm-hmm.
kind of idea, where we move away from the things that we start to recognize don't really serve us. They're
Mm-hmm.
not really
Right.
everlasting.
Mm-hmm.
They're not something that can maintain the vibration of kind of a higher state of being. They may be
elevate you even towards that direction.
They might just satisfy kind of our lower energies. They might just satisfy our initial cravings, but they're not satisfying that deeper, higher, longer, more longer lasting cravings, I guess, or satisfactions, I guess. And that's what I feel like I've learned through the practice of yoga and the discipline of spiritual practice, is that there is this sense of everlasting peace, or it's written about in the sutras about the different stages of samadhi, the different stages of liberation, that this is part of the process of how they come into being, is by being around things that elevate and uplift. And you start to discern, I think, over time, when you build in a practice, about what works, what doesn't work.
Right.
What's going to be lasting, what's going to just be temporary, what's the Band-Aid, what's really the salve that satisfies the heart.
Yeah, because a salve is different than a Band-Aid. Right. And I like how it says in here, we've been given the capacity to face it and rise above it. And I saw this thing earlier, and I see this often, where people will be like, we're all just doing the best we can. And that's, even in I've had, spiritual teachers say it, and I've always disagreed, which I think is quite funny, because, it's such a common saying. And it's like, you guys got to understand, because we're all doing the best we can. And I'm like, no, we're not. We're not doing the best we can most of the time, I think, all of us included.
I agree.
I agree. I think there's always an opportunity and the capacity to say, maybe I could have done it better. Maybe tomorrow, instead of getting frustrated and, I don't know, smoking a cigarette or whatever, instead tomorrow, if I get frustrated, I'm going to breathe. You know what I mean? But it's like, at the end of the day, you can be like, well, I deserved that cigarette. I deserved that extra pint of ice cream or donut.
Extra donut.
Whatever it is. Or, you know what? That guy was being a jerk in the car, so I had every right to behave poorly towards him. Or, it's like,
justifying.
And I've done that before. I've been in the car before, and I've reacted. And I felt horribly guilty. Because I know that I have the capacity to do better than that, And even if I was having a rough morning, it doesn't matter to me.
But what helps you know that you have that capacity? Like how somebody might be like, that's it. That's as good as it gets. But how is it? Something in you knows that you have that capacity.
Well, I think because I have a discipline, because I've already been practicing.
Well, and that's
but other people maybe too already have a practice. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's a good point that it's something that may not be instantaneous, but that's something I often talk about in the practice, is that some of these things get revealed slowly. They get presented to us because of the practice. It's not just like I'm going to go to one class and then I have that moment, but it's because we've been practicing for years, and it really does start to change the chemistry of the way you orient to other people and things. And because I think without a daily practice, we both recognize a regular practice is important, because otherwise I feel like my natural tendency and the way gravity works is I'll just go back to my regular way of coping and dealing with things. Yeah. And I recognize that when I include this on a regular basis, daily basis, then it maintains that way of seeing the world that I know creates more joy and peace in me.
That's right. I think it's interesting too what a telltale sign your body is, right? Because when you're feeling more at peace and more, in a practice of rising above some of the habitual stuff, you stand taller, you breathe more freely, you don't think so much about your breath, because it's so natural, and we all know this, regardless if you have a spiritual practice or if you just have a practice of, like, okay, I'm just going to do a little meditation or, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if you aren't doing things that help you rise above just the monotony of the gravity of life, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at gravity
You
of
just
life.
start breathing less, right? And you feel heavy. Your body feels heavy. You know, you start to eat differently. You're not caring for yourself, and then you're like, I'm just doing the best I can, and it's like, hey,
Yeah, that's why we need support. We need friends.
Yeah.
And that's what's an important part of having a good community.
Yeah.
That there is a natural gravitation, and I'm glad that you all feel pulled in to watch these, for those of you that have been watching and participating and sharing. And I appreciate that, because I feel that helps lift me up. And I know when you get to do this with me, it lifts me up. I get excited that we're going to do this. So thank you for joining me again.
Thank you for having me.
Love having you here. And thank you all again, and we'll see you tomorrow.